Josh, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Josh, you have lived multiple lives. You've been a BMX athlete, you're also a brain tumor survivor, and a high performance coach. When you look back at all these experiences that have shaped your life, what's the single biggest mindset shift that allowed you to break through each one of these challenges?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing I've noticed that's been with me the whole time is a vision that I have for my ideal life and not being defined by my circumstances. And in terms of what I've gained mindset shift that's really helped me the most, it started before I was taught this consciously. It was something that I just took on as a part of my operating system at one point. But it's this idea of being at cause for my reality, meaning I'm going to take ownership of where I am and I'm going to empower myself to choose how I move forward and do my best to continue to become aware of all the things. And so the concept is being at cause rather than being at effect to my environment, my circumstances. The way I see it as being at cause is taking ownership, it's accountability. It's to say things happen out of our control and I'm going to choose how I respond and move forward. Being at effect, the other side of the equation is being the victim. It's easy, sometimes comfortable, especially when we latch on to being right. Being right feels good. It also voids any ownership and allows us to escape resistance and stress, fear. But really, to me, the being at cause rather than being at effect is the equation to empowerment. It's so powerful to me that I got it tattooed across my hand. It says C greater than E. And so if you can be on the C side more often, I believe you'll have a more enjoyable life. Not to say bad things won't happen, tough times won't happen, they will. And with being at cause, I've learned and experienced, embodied the intellectual piece of how much easier it is to endure, embrace, and overcome the tough times that will happen rather than getting stuck there and then being defined by those circumstances, which is easy to do. It's not easy to take ownership and accept your role in your own suffering, which is a big part of the equations. That's been the single biggest mindset shift of all, because that's the first domino, I believe, to take ownership of your life and to create change. You gotta be at cause. You gotta accept, hey, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for a brain tumor. I didn't ask for injuries in my BMX career. That wasn't the goal. And it was something I accepted as along the way of where I wanted to go. I had to go through these things as by design to become stronger, smarter, have the experiences, all the things I didn't have that these experiences gave me. I can use those moving forward. So that's the big shift.
I love the growth and the mindset shift that has emerged as a result of your challenges. And as I look back also on my own brain adventures and also having had a brain tumor like you, having had a 9-hour brain operation, I know you've had multiple brain tumor operations. In my case, every single time I went to that operating room, it really opened a fresh perspective on life. And I was curious if you could share with our audience, how did those brain operations and health challenges change your view on life?
The first change was the first brain tumor, and that was when I was 21. This was 2010, and it taught me the things I didn't value were part of the reason why I was in that situation. So my health, for example, I could say I valued my health. I could say a lot of things, but my demonstration wasn't congruent to that word, that saying I value my health. So when my life and my health were, told that they could be at risk, I could lose my life, I could lose my health, I instantly shifted to understanding the most valuable thing to me at that time was BMX, was my career that I worked so hard for and I was living. And the one thing that wasn't a part of my value list or was at the bottom was taking care of myself, because I was young. I was, a professional athlete. I was in shape, all the things, all the check boxes marked, except I wasn't doing the things a healthy person would do. I just happened to have a physical appearance that looked like what we deem healthy in the society. But internally, I was struggling. And then therefore I got a brain tumor as part of that. So that's where I took accountability and I was like, well, at the very least, I know the way I was living, the things I was eating, the things I was drinking, the way my lifestyle didn't help. At best, it didn't help. At worst, it fueled it. And so that was something that I learned very, very quickly was I needed to shift. I needed to make my health my number one priority, which it still is today. And I've just compounded more information and evidence as to why that's important, because anything else in my life that I value and I care about, it comes at the effect of how well I'm doing mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And I don't ever want to be in a place where I was fortunate enough to escape death the first time, many other times. I don't want to get to a place like that and have a regret of I could have done all these things because now I know. And so the whole concept of ignorance is bliss, that doesn't compute with me anymore. It one time did, and I realized that was keeping me safe, comfortable, avoiding the things that I probably knew I should have been doing. And now those are the very things that I'm passionate about doing. And so that was the biggest change that it allowed me to see was I need to take my health more seriously.
What are some of the steps that you have taken to radically prioritize your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, as you shared before?
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest shift I've made is looking at myself as one system, not different components, which medical systems today, we specialize in one of them for very good reasons, so complex. I just see a disconnect in terms of like there's like the brain body connection. And as I've learned more about the nervous system, there is no brain body connection. They're just it's one. So it's kind of redundant and kind of counterintuitive, but I used to think the brain was one thing, my body was another thing, my heart was another thing. It's all connected through the nervous system. And so the biggest shift I've made, I'll simplify now, is focusing on how to take care of myself through the lens of the nervous system, through the lens of stress regulation and adaptation. And for me, I realized that I had a lot of unprocessed trauma from my childhood that had just been compounding and then guided me in a direction that I thought was going to unconsciously thought that was going to fix my problems that I was living within until the first tumor diagnosis and surgery. And I took ownership of myself at a very small level, which was first nutrition. Okay, well, if the environment, like let's say a fishbowl, a goldfish is in a fishbowl and the water is getting dirtier, we don't just keep adding food and medicine in there expecting the fish to do better. It may help extend its life, but we have to change the water. So that was the first thing that came to mind for me was like, all right, well, let's change my water, my internal environment with the things I'm consuming. Food, beverages, that is the single most important decision we make every day besides what we put in our mind. So that's where I started. And then a couple of years later, I have had several diagnoses and surgeries, radiation treatments, but a couple of years later, I blew out my knee at a contest and tore my ACL. And then I had to learn the hard way about proper strength training and injury prevention. And so that was another thing. It was taking care of my physical health. And then I got really passionate about learning about metabolic health in general. So sleep, nutrition, exercise, stress regulation, all of these components. And it was still surface level. It was still looking at a problem and how to solve the problem rather than asking, where was the problem coming from? What was creating it? And then I got into the unconscious mind and the autonomic nervous system and learning about how we have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. And it took me months to wrap my mind around that and understand the different complexities of being a human in that regard. And so mindset became a really big component. And then I was starting to form a holistic picture of how to take better care of myself. And it wasn't just this or that, it was everything. And then now that's evolved into, I'm sure listeners and yourself maybe have heard the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and understanding the concept of how trauma, what it is and what it isn't, and how it gets stored in our body. And for me, my hypothesis, 15 years later, multiple surgeries and radiation treatments just for the brain tumors and still living with 2 small tumors today, my hypothesis is the more work I do in therapy and with the nervous system healing and working with my body, not against it, that I'll either be able to eliminate the diagnoses or the recurrence altogether, or they will continue to be there and just be stabilized, which is where I'm at now. So I think what I've noticed is I drew this out one time as like a graph, 2010, most severe diagnosis and surgery at the very bottom, I was unaware. As my awareness grew, my integration grew, the diagnoses and the severity of them have come down. So where I am now, my last piece of the puzzle, so to speak, is my hypothesis is the more work I do with my nervous system to heal the trauma, to embrace it, to get that stuff out, to get that energy moving, then maybe I'll have a higher probability of them not coming back. So that's a long way of saying the most important piece that I've done to improve myself is work from the inside out rather than the outside in, which is kind of how I started. And I think most people look at outcomes or problems from the outside. And then we ask a little bit of like, how can we change it, improve it? But very few of us actually think about getting to the core, getting to the root cause, the identity piece of who we are, how we operate. And so that's where I am now. And all the ways that make up me, how is that creating the experience that I'm living with? And how can I work with that and integrate what I've learned and be in a more congruent manner with my nervous system, my ideal life, so on and so forth.
Fantastic. I've had actually two experts on the podcast that specialize in metabolic health. I was wondering if you could share what practices that relate specifically to metabolic health that you have embraced that have created this shift, and you're now seeing the positive medical results, as you've said.
Yeah, I'd be curious of who they were because it's for years now I've been heavily, well, it's not so much lately, but I was heavily involved with the metabolic health community, anywhere from the ketogenic diet to paleo to so on and so forth. So an organization which you may know of, Metabolic Health Summit. They
Yes,
Yep. So Dr. Don Biagostino, Angela Poff, and
exactly.
Victoria Field, and then all the other amazing doctors, researchers, scientists. I mean, that's who I surrounded myself with, and just gained as much knowledge as I could to empower myself and share with others. So, but to your question, the things that I focus on is like my non-negotiables. If all else fails, it starts with my sleep, and it's more times than not a week. It ends up being 6, probably 7 days a week on average, probably 6, because the one night here or there, my wife going to date night, things like that, or there's a gathering or wedding. I'm flexible. That's the biggest piece of my life today. I'm not rigid, which creates stress. Ironically, it's a paradox. You want to get rid of stress, you do all the things to get rid of stress, but then you're rigid with it, creates stress. So now I'm flexible, but more times than not, I'm going to bed within the same 30-minute window and waking up within the same 30-minute window. So sleep is ideal and optimal for me. It's a non-negotiable. And then from there, it's my protein intake. That's the focus nutritionally. Like, how much protein am I getting? That's the biggest thing I've learned about metabolic health is muscle health. It's not about getting jacked. You don't get jacked on accident anyways. A lot of people have that excuse of like, I don't want to work out and resistance training, eat too much protein because I'm gonna get bulky. People spend a lifetime dedicated to that and they still struggle with it. So just like you don't accidentally become successful, you're not going to accidentally put on a ton of muscle mass. So I just try to take care of my muscle health the best I can. The number one thing for that is protein. And then from there on, it's resistance training. Nutritionally, I just try to eat whole food based more times than not. I mean, to me, it's just a lifestyle now. It's just a part of who I am. So different meats, fish, chicken, vegetables, fruits, just to keep it whole food based. And then I use supplements like protein powders and a new company that just came out that Dr. Peter Attia, who's like my favorite to learn metabolic health, partnered with the RX founders. They created a protein bar called David Protein. So that's a new tool of mine. So yeah, protein's next. And then after that, it's resistance training and just regular movement exercise. So I'm lifting 3 to 4 days a week in the gym. And then I enjoy golf, hiking, and just being outdoors. So those are my 3 non-negotiables. And then on top of that, I'm focused on nervous system healing. So stress regulation, not override, not suppression, not avoidance, not, if I feel, activated or triggered, I'm going to go avoid it by going on this walk and doing breath work. Those are great. I'm also working on sitting with the emotion, what's coming up, what's the story attached to it, the belief system I may have around it, and how can I work with this rather than override, which I used to do, or work against it. So in that order, it's sleep, nutrition, exercise, stress regulation, mindset's evolved, a part of all of it and involved in all of it. So, but that's like the foundation. I don't do too much supplementation. I do whey protein. That's one, but I consider that like a food. Same with electrolytes. I use electrolyte supplementation. I got it in my water right now. And then creatine. That's just another one that's like one of the true supplements I use. And then besides that, a brand called Ketone IQ, formerly known as HVMN, exogenous ketones. I use that as just like a nice buffer for my brain, boost of energy when I'm working on things or presenting, and just try to keep it simple. So those are the 2 supplements I use outside of electrolytes and protein powder. Just keep it simple and just work on consistency.
You just spoke about an important point that relates to how you actually deal with negative emotions or circumstances that emerge in your life. And rather than suppressing emotions, you actually actively explore and seek to find the root cause in order to grow, evolve, and change. If someone is feeling stuck today and is listening to us in this conversation, what advice would you give them? Where can they start to get unstuck?
Yeah, I think it just starts with auditing where you are, where you want to go, and then what's preventing you from getting to where you want to go. And then from there, I mean, that does take a level of vulnerability with yourself and courage to answer that question. You can ask that question and then answer it and work with what comes up. But that's the key. It's just building awareness. I mean, again, I go back to this idea like problem solving. We focus on what's going on rather than that being evidence of what's going on beneath the surface. Just like an iceberg, the majority of it's under the water. We just see what's on top. That's how we respond to our problems in life. We say, this is the problem, when actually there's a bulk of things we can't see that's actually causing the evidence that we see. So when someone feels stuck, why am I stuck? Where do I want to go? What's causing this? Like, what's the gap? What skills, knowledge, and resources and experiences do I need? And then from there, when it comes to mental and emotional health, like, work with a therapist if you can. I mean, that's a huge part of my work, is having people coaching me, whether it be my business coach or my therapist, or people around me that I call like focused people, like good friends of mine that hold me accountable, that support me with empathy and curiosity. Most importantly, is if someone's don't have the resources to do these things, that's where I was, and it comes down to accountability. Well, where am I? Where do I want to go? And what would it take? If I don't have the financial resources to work with a therapist, which I didn't have for years, I didn't have a coach for years. I couldn't afford any of it. I couldn't even afford a gym membership. So then I was like, all right, what do I do? Well, we live in a day and age where we can do things like this. We have smartphones, we have podcasts, we have YouTube, we have Audible books, we have all these different resources, from free to small amounts of investment, like $20. Well, what are you willing to do? That was a big question for me. What am I willing to do for the things that I say I want and need in my life? And virtual mentors, that's a huge piece of it. What allowed me to become successful. And then places like organizations like Metabolic Health Summit and other organizations, like, they put out so much free information that's tactical. It's just a matter of, do you want to be resourceful or not? And what are you willing to do for the things that you say you want?
When some individuals pursue goals and they stretch themselves to the point of burnout, what are the first signs that someone can actually identify and truly recognize that they've gone in this burnout cycle? And what's the fastest way that you would recommend for them to reverse this?
I'll answer the last question first, because it's simple. It's boundaries and saying no. It's being aware of what's truly a priority and what you're saying yes to that isn't aligned. And then why is that? So the signs, I mean, it could be, are you overcommitting to things? Are you being a people pleaser? Are you getting done with your day and you still feel like a failure? You could have done more. You're constantly stressed. You're tired but wired. I mean, it could be a whole host of different things that you just never feel like you're doing enough. You feel like you're doing so much, but you're not moving the needle. Like we talked before we started recording, I said, you asked me how I was doing. I was like, I feel like I've been really busy but productive. Not busy like just checking off things to feel good, but then like, why am I not going anywhere? Which used to be the old me. Now I'm very focused on what's actually a priority. So I mean, it could be different for everyone, but those are some of the common ones I run into, is just never feeling like there's enough time, never feeling like you're doing enough, shaming yourself into working more, shaming yourself into not resting more, chronically being stressed with the mindset of like stress is good. Acute stress is good. Chronic stress is harmful. So there's just different elements to be aware of, but it all comes back to your awareness. And if you feel like you're burning out, I mean, people can probably feel like they burn out, but then they convince themselves that they're not, because what does society say? And this whole hustle culture and success culture that I think a lot of people lack the ability to look through and see the nuance there that may be being spoken or may not being spoken. They just see things. And so, I mean, it's just a matter of like your level of awareness, and then getting support helps that too. You can have people that can, based on your language and what you're asking for help with or what you're trying to navigate, they can help you see like if you're burning out or close to burning out. So just putting those different systems in can allow you to create that bigger level of awareness, and then, work on creating boundaries and saying no more often.
What have you seen as the most common limiting belief that keeps people from achieving fantastic things in their lives?
It'd probably just be this idea that I'm not enough. I think it shows up in different ways, but it's like this idea of not being worthy unless fill in the blank, which, the overcommitment piece, that's another, like a fear of not being seen as important or good enough. I mean, I think when you look at burnout, what's fueling that is fear, and then also a lack of prioritizing self. So I just worked on an issue of my newsletter coming out this week and a YouTube video to pair with it about overcommitment. And overcommitment, to me, it's a self-respect problem. It's a selfishness problem. You think that you're trying to help other people or do all these things, but you're abandoning yourself, and you need to have more value put on yourself. So yeah, it's like this idea that if you don't value your word and your commitment to yourself and other people, then you don't value your time. And if you don't value your time, you don't value yourself. And you could say you value yourself, but then your demonstration shows otherwise. And then that's when people lead to burnout. And what's beneath all that? It's typically either an emotion fueling a belief, or a belief fueling the emotion, or vice versa, or it's just connected, of just like, I'm not good enough unless I do more. I'm not good enough unless people think that, or it's like this idea like I'm worthy because I'm always in need. People need my time, and I'm always busy being stretched every which way. But then they're the very people that are unfulfilled, sick, tired, chronically stressed, on the verge of burnout, resentful. And it's like, all right, well, what are you going for here? So yeah, the limiting belief thing, it usually comes down to like a self-worth. It's verbalized in different manners from what I understand and experience.
From your life journey until now, what role has joy played in building your resilience?
Yeah, that's an interesting one for me because I've gone in and out of phases with it where I think back to BMX, and when I first started it was a pure place of joy, and then now I've been considering it can be both things, but now I'm considering, was it really joy or was it escape from a negative childhood? And so I hold the belief that it's both of them. And then I found myself in places where that place of joy turned into a career. And then there was it was still anchored in joy, and at the same time equally anchored in survival. So it started as escapism, and then it turned into a career, and then it was like, okay, I need this to survive. I need to make money. And that took away the joy at times. And then when I got my mind right and worked through some things, and it was like, all right, I'm back to like pure joy. And then even now I had a recent experience with a guided psilocybin journey, and it got me into this place of a familiar yet foreign space of pure joy, bliss, flow, without the restrictions of my conscious mind judging myself and the past nervous system traumas and just things like that. So it's something I'm working on experiencing more. And then, like I mentioned earlier, instead of working against my body, against my nervous system, which governs a lot of, or if not everything in our body and our mind, what can I do to break those cycles? So I'm really working to unlearn things that took me out of that joy state, because I used to shame myself for doing something that was joyful or like made me happy. I was like, well, I'm not being productive. It was like this scarcity, stress, survival mindset that was my nervous system locked in the past. So now I'm starting to experience joy more. And I believe that like one of the points of life is to experience more joy. Yeah, life is going to also, I believe that life is a design to see, how much you can grow and adapt. And a big part of that is why? Well, I want to experience more joy and fulfillment and success as I define success and happiness. Joy has become more of a part of my vocabulary lately. Just freedom of just being myself and enjoying myself without the restrictions. And when I did notice those old thoughts, those old stories, it was like, all right, I can push that away, not avoid, or just like let it go and just get back into what I was doing in the moment. And so it's become more of what I want to experience now that I'm aware that I wasn't experiencing. I just thought I was, but it was wrapped up in this survival state.
If there would be a recipe to actually experience more joy in life, what would you say are the three main ingredients?
The three main ingredients to express or experiencing more joy would be curiosity, authenticity, and empathy. Not sure in that order, but I would say in that order. But I think if you're more curious, you create more opportunity to be pleasantly surprised rather than committing to being right. If you're more authentic, which that's not as simple as it sounds. I mean, I've heard for years, just be yourself. But if your nervous system is trapped in that not being safe, that's what all you've known is like, it's not safe to be myself. I got to put on this mask, which is a big part of my past. Then you can't be authentic, but you can work towards it. So I think that level of curiosity opens the door to being more vulnerable with yourself, to become more authentic in expressing who you are and the things that you care about and are passionate about. And then the empathy piece, I believe that allows us to look at ourselves in more of a graceful manner, and then the other people in the outside world. And that equation just allows more joy and peace, because you're not being committed to right. You're not judging other people without realizing that you're actually unconsciously judging yourself and seeing that in other people. So I think that's the equation for me as it comes up right now.
Great. And what is one belief that you've held over the last couple of years that you've completely changed your mind about recently?
Well, I've changed my mind about recently.
Yes.
Oh, what actually comes up now, this has been a part of my therapy work, this idea that I have to get things right. I have to work hard and I have to be perfect and I have to perform, rather than there's beauty in mistakes. There's beauty in just being a human. That's actually, like, glad you asked that question that came up, because that's actually the thing I had to unlearn. And now I'm rewiring it into my nervous system of this belief of, I just need to be myself. How can I be myself? Just be more authentic and passionate about the thing, rather than trying to get the thing right. right, so to speak. Because what I'm noticing is people resonate with that more because they can feel that, rather than if I have everything polished and perfect, but I'm like robotic, there's not much connection there. So that's where I am to your question, is really letting go of that old, like, I got to be perfect, I got to put on this mask to perform, can't let people see me. And now I'm like, all right, how do I let people see more of me while also still doing a, high level job of performing the thing, and not taking it seriously, but still, having that balance of being myself and also being connected to why I'm doing what I'm doing, but freely expressing myself through it.
Beautiful. And since you've given us your recipe for joy, what is your recipe for success?
Success to me is simple. I want to continue growing and I want to have an impact. So when I talk about like focused people in my life, I'm trying to connect with people that are focused on growth, contribution, and impact. So to me, success is me always being in a place of growth and being able to contribute what I'm learning and what I'm experiencing, so that way I can have an impact beyond myself in my own life.
You've coached so many individuals over the last couple of years. What is the most powerful insight that seems to have transformed people faster when you coach them?
I'd say I'm torn between two concepts. One, I shared earlier, the being at cause is greater than being at effect. I think that resonates a lot with people. And then also this belief I have that we're only always doing our very best with the resources available to us at the time. I think once that sinks in for people, they have a lot more grace with themselves. They let their guard down, and then they appreciate the work they've been doing, the work they've done to be in this moment, and all the opportunity and support they've had. And so when you combine both of those, it's just a recipe for grit and determination and success.
How can people learn more about your work?
My website's probably the best one-stop shop, joshperrybmx.com. All my socials are at Josh Perry BMX, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. But yeah, the website's probably the best. And then from there, I'm most active on, well, it was LinkedIn and Instagram, but now I'm active weekly on my YouTube channel again, so creating more short form or long form content, meaning 10 to 15, maybe 20-minute videos there once a week. So but yeah, my website, just joshperrybmx.com, is the one-stop shop.
What's one question people should ask themselves every day to live with more joy, clarity, and fulfillment?
For what purpose? When you consider making a decision, setting a goal, saying something, doing something, ask yourself, for what purpose? Fill in the blank. So for what purpose do I want to set this goal? For what purpose do I want to skip the gym today? For what purpose do I want to go to the gym? So on and so forth. That if you can get in a habit of asking yourself that question, then you start to create a lot of awareness, because sometimes you won't like the answer to that question. And then you go, okay, well, what do I want to do now? So I love that's one of my favorite questions, is for what purpose do I want to fill in the blank? For what purpose do I want to set this goal?
I love that. So, talking about purpose, what is your purpose in life today?
My purpose is to grow and to help other people do the same. That's it.
Amazing.
That's it.
If you could leave our listeners with a final takeaway, what would it be?
Really think about the life you're designing. Are you designing it for yourself, or are you designing it for other people that may or may not really care what you're doing? May have something to say, but they're not the ones living it. So I think just like that idea of like auditing your decisions, and if your decisions are congruent to the life you want to live, because I mean, it's cliche to say, but we only, as far as we know, only get one life. You might as well try to make it the best life you can.
Indeed. And on those amazing words, Josh, it's been an immense pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.